Have you ever had it all? I mean, truly had everything you could ever wish for. A family that was your entire world, a career that shone so brightly it cast a shadow of envy, a place in the world so secure you thought nothing could ever touch you. Have you ever felt that perfect, blissful peace? And then, in the span of a single heartbeat, had it all turned to ash in your hands? What would you do if your world collapsed? Not by the hand of a random enemy, but by a design set in motion from the very place you put your absolute faith. And how would you react when you discover that your closest friend, the one person you believed would wipe away your tears, was actually the one waiting to rub salt in your deepest, most agonizing wounds? This is not just a story about loss. This is the story of Lyra, a woman who journeyed to the absolute edge of despair, not to find death, but to find a truth far greater than faith itself. A truth that could fundamentally change the way you look at hardship, at your own self-worth, and at the incredible, unbreakable power that lies dormant inside of you. And I promise you, the end of this story is not what you think it will be. Right now, before we step into this journey together, I want to feel your presence. Let me know where you're listening to this from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Leave a comment below so we know that no matter where we are, we're sharing this moment together. Our story begins in Palmyra, the city of palms, a jewel of honey-colored stone shimmering in the heart of the ancient Syrian desert. Here, where life and death were separated by a mere whisper of sand-swept wind, one woman had taught the desert to bloom. Her name was Lyra. She was not a queen, but her influence rippled further than that of any monarch. Lyra was a merchant matriarch, a weaver of commerce who had built an empire from silk, spices, and sheer will. Her caravans, like colossal desert serpents, breathed the scents of cinnamon, myrrh, and frankincense as they forged paths between east and west. Her name was a currency of respect in every marketplace, from the grand forums of Rome to the opulent courts of Persia. She was wealthy, yes, but her riches were not the source of her legend. Lyra's secret, her deepest pride and greatest blessing, was hidden away behind the high walls of her estate, a sanctuary where only her most trusted were permitted. It was a private oasis, a vibrant miracle of green in a world of unrelenting gold. And at its heart, beneath a crystalline dome engineered to capture the purest light of dawn, grew the celestial bloom. This was no earthly flower. Its petals were as thin as spun silk, bearing a blue so deep it mirrored a starless midnight sky. Upon each petal, a constellation of tiny, glittering specks shimmered, as if the stars themselves had been captured within it. It was said its fragrance could mend a broken spirit, and its pollen, when carefully prepared, could turn back the tide of fatal illness. The celestial bloom was the fount of prosperity, not only for Lyra, but for her entire community. She and she alone could make it grow. It was believed she was a chosen vessel of the Creator, blessed with a divine touch. Her hands didn't just cultivate a flower, they cultivated hope. Her life was a perfect symphony. Her husband Cassian was an astronomer, a man of quiet wisdom whose eyes held the gentle light of the stars he studied, and who loved her more than any constellation. They had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, who were the vibrant, laughing heart of her existence. Her family was a fortress of love against the turbulent world. Surrounding this fortress were her 3 closest friends, the pillars that supported her world. There was Zohar, a profoundly learned scholar whose long beard and encyclopedic knowledge were a source of counsel. There was Kael, a retired warrior of unwavering loyalty who commanded her caravan guards. And there was Alara, the serene high priestess of the city's main temple, whose faith was as pure as spring water. They were her inner circle, the ones with whom she shared her triumphs and her quietest fears. But even in the most perfect garden, a shadow can linger where the sun does not reach. Behind the facade of admiration, A seed of envy had taken root in the heart of Zohar, a man who had dedicated his life to studying divine power through ancient texts. He could not reconcile why the gift of the celestial bloom was bestowed upon a merchant, a woman of the material world. He saw it as a cosmic injustice. Each time he saw Lyra standing beside her sacred flower, her aura more radiant than any doctrine he had ever mastered, a bitter resentment coiled within him. He hid it well, beneath layers of scholarly discourse, but it was there, a toxic seed, waiting for a rain of tragedy to nourish its growth. Lyra's life flowed on, beautiful and full, like her oasis in a desert that had forgotten how to storm. She was blissfully unaware that her very perfection had drawn the gaze of powers far beyond the mortal coil, and in a realm outside of time, a fateful wager was about to be made, with her soul and her faith as the stakes. In that higher dimension where concepts wore the form of light and shadow, the Creator looked down upon Lyra's oasis, and a sense of pride, vast and luminous, filled the ether. "Behold," the Creator's voice resonated, a sound like the harmonious turning of galaxies. "Look at my creation, Lyra. She is a testament to goodness, resilience, and a faith as pure as the bloom she cultivates. Her heart is a sanctuary. There is none like her in the mortal realm." But from the deep folds of nothingness, a voice of dissonance emerged, a sound like fracturing glass. It was not a voice of pure evil, but of fundamental doubt. It was the skeptic, an ancient entity whose very existence was to question all truths. "Goodness," the skeptic scoffed. "Her goodness is a gilded cage, forged from the bars of your blessings and protection. She is good because she has never known true suffering. She has faith because she has never been truly forsaken. Let me test her. Let me scorch her garden, silence the laughter in her halls, and strip away her gilded life, and you will see. Your perfect creation will curse your name with her dying breath." A silence, profound and absolute, settled over the realm. The Creator's gaze met the skeptic's. "Very well," the Creator finally decreed, the voice unwavering. "I accept your challenge, for my faith in her is greater than your doubt. You may touch all that she possesses. You may unravel the tapestry of her life, thread by thread. But this one thing you will not do. You will not take her life." And so the wager was struck. A cosmic game with the life of an unsuspecting woman as the board. Down on Earth, the day began as any other in Palmyra. The sky was a flawless canvas of blue. But then a strange wind began to blow, hot and acrid, carrying the scent of sulfur and ash. Tragedy did not arrive like a rising tide. It came like a tidal wave, instantaneous and absolute. The first messenger came sprinting, his clothes torn, his face a mask of horror. "My lady," he gasped, collapsing at her feet. "A firestorm from a clear sky. I have never seen such a thing. The oasis, it is gone, burned to the ground. The celestial bloom, it is ash." Lyra's world tilted. Before she could process the words, a second messenger arrived, his face deathly pale. "The caravans, Lady Lyra, attacked by a legion of desert raiders. They came from all sides. We were overwhelmed. The goods are lost, the guards, even Commander Kyle. They are all gone." A second hammer blow. Her fortune, the bedrock of her family's security, vanished. But the torrent of ruin was not finished. As the second man spoke, a low rumble shook the very foundations of the city. An earthquake. Lyra's eyes flew to the grand edifice of the school she had built for the city's children, where her own 3 were studying. She watched in frozen horror as its magnificent dome groaned, fractured, and then imploded, burying everything and everyone beneath it in a cloud of dust and finality. A mortal silence fell. There were no screams, only the sound of settling stone and the hollow whistle of the wind. That was the final blow. It didn't just take her wealth. It took her future, her very soul. Her husband, Cassian, ran to the rubble, tearing at the massive stones with his bare hands until they were bloody and broken. but only silence answered him. That night, Lyra found him sitting in their now empty courtyard, his eyes staring, vacant. His heart, the heart of a gentle astronomer, had been shattered. Within days, he withered like a tree starved of water and passed away in her arms, his unseeing eyes still searching for the children who would never return. In a single day, Lyra lost everything, all of it. The people of Palmyra now looked at her with a mixture of pity and fear, whispering that she must have committed some terrible hidden sin to invite such divine wrath. Lyra heard them, but she remained silent. She followed the traditions of mourning. She took a blade and sheared off her own long black hair. She shed her robes of fine silk for the coarse gray cloth of the penitent. And amidst the ruins of her home, she knelt and whispered to the empty sky, "The Creator gives, and the Creator takes away. Blessed be the name of the Creator." In the heavens, the skeptic watched, a flicker of surprise in its shadowy form. "She is resilient," it conceded, "but her pain is still external. Let me touch her flesh." Men can endure loss, but they cannot endure the prison of their own ceaseless pain. The second assault began. Lyra awoke one morning to a tormenting itch. She looked down to see angry red welts blooming on her skin. Within days, a hideous ailment consumed her. Her skin became a canvas of open sores, weeping and putrid, the pain so relentless that every breath was an agony. She was cast out of the city, forced to live in a wretched hovel, her only companions the stray dogs, and her own misery. The woman who was once a symbol of perfection had become an icon of revulsion. It was then that her three friends came to her: Lyra, the recently returned Kael, who had miraculously survived the ambush, though with a fearsome scar down his face, and Zohar. They braved the stench and the fear of contagion to see their fallen friend. Kael, the soldier, looked at her with pained eyes. "This is a battle, Lyra. You must fight." Lyra, the priestess, took her disfigured hand. "The Creator is testing you. Keep your faith. Your reward in the next life will be immeasurable." Their words were kind, but they were pebbles thrown into an abyss. They could not touch the depths of her suffering. But then Zohar spoke. He looked at her not with pity, but with a complex, analytical gaze, a chilling blend of scholarly assessment and a dark, triumphant satisfaction. "Lyra," he began, his voice measured and calm, "we know the Creator is just. He does not punish without cause. Perhaps you should look inward. Perhaps your wealth made you arrogant. Perhaps you began to see the divine gift as your own accomplishment." He paused, letting the poison seep in. "The celestial bloom is a sacred entity. It requires a soul of absolute purity to nurture it. Perhaps the Creator has merely corrected an error. Perhaps, Lyra, you were never truly worthy of it." In that moment, Lyra's world broke for a second time. This was not the indifferent cruelty of the gods. This was the intimate cruelty of a friend. The loss of her family was a physical amputation. Zohar's words were a soul-deep infection. They didn't just say she was suffering, they said she deserved to suffer. It was a damnation that invalidated her entire life, her love, her integrity. That was the final blow. The slender thread of faith she had been desperately clinging to snapped. For 7 days and 7 nights after Zohar's visit, Lyra was mute. She sat in her hovel, a vacant stare fixed on the darkness. Her pain had metastasized beyond grief into a malignant tumor of despair. On the 8th night, as the moon hid its face behind a shroud of black clouds, she finally spoke. It was not a prayer, it was a curse. But she did not curse the Creator. Instead, she turned the full force of her agony inward, upon the one target she could attack without committing the ultimate blasphemy, her own existence. "Let the day perish on which I was born," she wailed, her voice a raw, animalistic sound. "And the night that said, a child is conceived, let that day be darkness. Let not God above regard it, nor let the light shine upon it." She staggered to her feet, her eyes blazing in the gloom. Let the blackest night seize it, erase it from the calendar. Let the night of my conception be a barren wasteland where no cry of joy is ever heard. Let those who curse days, who are skilled in rousing Leviathan, let them curse that day for me. Why? Why did I not die at birth? Why did I emerge from the womb to live this life of torment? She looked at Kyle and Lyra, her eyes filled with the anguish of 1,000 lifetimes. Why were there knees to receive me and breasts to nurse me? For then I would have lain down and been quiet. I would have slept and been at rest with kings and counselors of the earth who rebuilt ruins for themselves. Or why was I not buried like a stillborn child who never saw the light? This was her raw, unfiltered confession, the breaking point. There in the grave, she whispered, her voice cracking, the wicked cease from troubling, and the weary are at rest. There the prisoners are at ease together. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master. So why? Why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter in soul? She turned her gaze to the empty darkness outside her hut, as if addressing an unseen entity. What is the point of a life that has no meaning? Why do you keep us alive when you have blocked all the exits? Instead of food, my sighing comes to me, and my groanings are poured out like water. For the thing that I greatly feared has come upon me. My peace is gone. There is no rest for me, only turmoil. Her confession hung in the air, a silence heavier and more terrible than any scream. Her friends were stunned. They realized her pain had transcended any religious platitude they could offer. The conflict was no longer between Lyra and her fate. It had become a terrifying internal war, a battle between the memory of a perfect faith and the reality of a silent, cruel heaven. Lyra had reached the bottom of the abyss. From here, there were only two paths: to be consumed by the darkness forever, or to find a new kind of strength in the ashes of her soul. The debate that followed was as harsh and unforgiving as a desert storm. Lyra's raw despair did not elicit sympathy. It ignited judgment. Lyra, the priestess, spoke first, her voice no longer gentle but sharp with religious certainty. Lyra, this is blasphemy. Your suffering is a crucible, not a tomb. You must accept it with humility, not with curses. Kale, the warrior, his scarred face grim, nodded in agreement. You were once the strongest person I knew. Look at you now, wallowing in weakness. Your enemy is not fate, Lyra. It is the despair in your own heart. Rise up and fight it. But it was Zohar who delivered the most methodical, cruelest blows. He stepped forward, his eyes alight with the righteous fire of the self-assured. You see, this is the proof I spoke of. These curses are the evidence of your flawed soul. Your pride did not vanish with your fortune. It was merely hidden, and now it reveals itself. You do not mourn your children. You mourn the loss of your own perfection. You do not suffer from your illness. You suffer from the loss of others' admiration. There must be a secret sin, Lyra, one so monstrous you dare not even admit it to yourself. This is not a test. This is a punishment, and it is one you have earned. Each word was a poisoned dart, but something strange happened. Instead of collapsing, instead of weeping, a different kind of fire ignited in Lyra's eyes. It was the fire of a cornered animal that decides it will no longer retreat. It was the fury of a spirit that has nothing left to lose and everything to defend. She rose slowly. Her body was a ruin, but her posture was straight, regal. Enough, she said, her voice quiet, yet it cut through the air with absolute authority. She looked at the three faces that once meant the world to her. You, she began, her gaze sweeping over them, my hollow comforters. You came not to soothe my pain, but to validate your own simplistic view of the universe, a tidy world where goodness is rewarded and wickedness is punished. A world with no room for meaningless tragedy, no space for chaos. Because if you were to admit my innocence, it would mean that your world is a lie. It would mean that this same senseless horror could befall any of you at any time without reason. She fixed her eyes on Zohar. And you, the great scholar, you speak of a secret sin. No, Zohar, my only sin in your eyes was my success. My crime was possessing the gift you coveted. You see not the hand of God in my suffering. You see only the satisfaction of your own envy. Your words are not wisdom. They are a mask for your own smallness. Then she turned to Kael and Alara. And you two, you tell me to fight, to accept, but you don't understand. My integrity was real. My love for my family was real. My faith was real. And if those things were real, and I still suffer this, then the problem is not with me. The problem is with the very nature of justice in this universe. My integrity is the one thing you, or fate, or even the Creator cannot take from me. With that, she turned away from them. She lifted her blazing eyes to the vast, indifferent, star-dusted sky. Tears began to stream down her face, not of despair, but of defiance. Her body trembled, not from sickness, but from the force of an emotion so immense it threatened to tear her apart. An expectant hush fell. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. And then she screamed. It was not a scream for help or a cry of grief. It was a scream that carried the full, consolidated power of a soul that had walked through hell and emerged on the other side with nothing left to fear. It was a question that shattered the very premise of the cosmic wager. She did not ask, "Why me?" That was the question of a victim. She asked something far more profound, far more dangerous. "What is the purpose?" Her voice echoed across the ruins, tearing through the fabric of the night. She repeated it, no longer a scream, but a demand articulated with terrifying clarity. "What is the purpose of this? If my strength did not come from the celestial bloom, then where does it come from? If my worth was not in my wealth, my family, or the admiration of others, then where is it?" She spread her ravaged arms wide, an offering of her own brokenness. "I am not asking for my fortune back. I am not asking for my children's lives, for I know that is impossible. I am not asking for my health. I am asking for one thing." She drew a ragged breath and uttered her final, ultimate demand. "I demand an explanation." In that instant, the universe tilted on its axis. The true twist of the story was not an external event. It was an internal revolution. Lyra had transformed her tragedy from a punishment to be endured into a mystery to be solved. She was no longer a pawn in a divine game. She had seized the board and declared herself a player, a seeker of truth. She had rejected the role of the silent sufferer and claimed the title of the conscious human being who demands to understand. Her question was not aimed at reclaiming what was lost. It was aimed at redefining what remained. And in the deafening silence that followed her cry, Lyra did not wait for an answer from the heavens. She began to search for it within herself. No thunderclap answered her. No angel descended on wings of light. The answer did not come from without. It rose from within, like a subterranean river finally breaking through the earth's crust after a great quake. It came to her not as a voice, but as a silent, searing understanding. She saw it. This ordeal, this cosmic wager, it was never about her loyalty. It was never a test to see if she would break and curse her Creator. That was the profound, arrogant misunderstanding of both the Creator and the skeptic. They had both been asking the wrong question. The true purpose was not to see how her faith would hold up under pressure. The true purpose was for her to realize that her worth had never, ever been contained within the celestial bloom. In a moment of blinding clarity, she understood a simple, universe-altering truth. She was not the gardener, she was the garden. The celestial bloom, her wealth, her family, they were all seeds that had been planted in her soil. Seeds could be burned, plants could be uprooted, but the soil itself, the rich, fertile ground of her being, remained. Its capacity to nurture, to endure, to regenerate, that was her essence, not the things she possessed. Her true power wasn't the magic to make a rare flower grow. Her true power was the ability to rise from the ashes, the resilience that smoldered long after the fire was out, the compassion and integrity that remained intact even when the whole world called her a sinner. The Creator and the Skeptic were two sides of the same flawed lesson. One gave external gifts to test humility. The other took them away to test endurance. But both had missed the fundamental point. What is a human being when all external definitions are stripped away? Lyra had found her answer. She was resilience, she was regeneration, she was the soil itself. With this epiphany, a strange and profound peace settled over her. The rage subsided. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it no longer consumed her. It was a scar now, a reminder of a battle fought, not a gaping wound. She turned to her three friends, her eyes transformed. They held a new kind of wisdom and a deep, aching pity. She looked at Kael, the loyal warrior, and Lyra, the devout priestess. A faint, genuine smile touched her lips. Thank you for staying with me. I know you meant well. I forgive your lack of understanding, just as I hope the universe will forgive my own. Her words held no trace of bitterness. Kael and Lyra looked at each other, utterly bewildered by her sudden serenity. They felt small and foolish in the presence of the immense peace that had enveloped the woman they thought had gone mad. Then Lyra's gaze fell upon Zohar. She looked directly into his eyes, and in hers there was no hatred. There was only a vast, bottomless sadness. "And I pity you, Zohar," she said softly, but each word landed with the weight of a mountain. "All your life, you have searched for power in ancient scrolls and hollow doctrines. You were envious of a flower you believed was the source of my strength, but you were looking at the finger pointing at the moon and mistaking it for the moon itself. The power was never in the flower, Zohar. The power is in the capacity to cultivate." She paused, the silence amplifying her next words. "You were envious of my garden, but you never saw that you had a garden of your own, a garden of intellect and knowledge, and instead of tending it, you allowed the weeds of jealousy and resentment to grow wild until they choked everything. You turned your own fertile ground into a wasteland. That, my friend, is the only true tragedy here." Zohar staggered back as if struck. His face went pale. The armor of his intellect shattered, revealing the withered, empty soul within. He could not bear her gaze, a gaze that did not condemn, but simply saw the truth. Without another word, he turned and fled, his shadow swallowed by the night. He had come as a judge and left as a man condemned by his own barren heart. Lyra's recovery was not a miracle. It was a process. There was no divine intervention that restored her fortune or her family. Her rebirth was slower, more real, and therefore more profound. As her mind healed, as she came to terms with the purpose she had found within her own tragedy, her body began to respond. The hideous ailment receded. The sores began to heal, leaving behind a network of silvery scars, a map of her journey. The process took months, and with each passing day, she felt life returning, not granted from on high, but drawn up from the deep well of her own inner strength. She did not immediately return to the city. She remained in her hovel, the place that had witnessed both her utter despair and her enlightenment. One morning, sifting through the ashes of her former oasis, her fingers closed around something small and hard. She opened her palm. There, impossibly, lay a single seed of the celestial bloom, somehow having survived the inferno. The old Lyra would have seen this as a divine sign. The new Lyra saw it simply for what it was, a seed, a vessel of potential, a potential that could only be unlocked through patient, humble cultivation. There was no grand ceremony. She used her own hands, once soft and now scarred and calloused, to dig a small hole in the fire-hardened earth. She placed the seed within. She had no holy water. She had only the water from a nearby well. She tended to it with this water, with the sweat of her brow under the desert sun, and perhaps with the quiet tears of remembrance and acceptance. Years passed. The story of the great merchant Lyra faded into legend. But a new story began to be told. whispers of a wise woman who lived in a small, thriving oasis. An oasis that was not grand, but was vibrant with a new kind of life. Lyra's new garden had no high walls. It was open to all. In its center, the celestial bloom grew again, but it was not alone. It was surrounded by date palms that offered sweet fruit, patches of hardy vegetables, and the resilient, beautiful wildflowers of the desert itself. Her garden became a symbol of diversity and tenacious life. She was no longer the richest merchant. She became a teacher, a healer of souls. People came to her not for magic pollen, but for guidance. She did not preach doctrines. She taught them how to till the soil, how to plant a seed, how to find the fertile ground within themselves. She taught them that everyone has their own celestial bloom, be it courage, compassion, artistry, or the simple ability to love. She no longer possessed a gift. She had become the gift. She had proven something far more important than passing a divine test, that a human being stripped of everything can create their own meaning, their own beauty, and their own life from the very ashes of their fate. Lyra lost everything, only to find her true self, a self more whole and powerful than she had ever been. Her story, shared here on our channel, is not a celebration of suffering, but a celebration of rebirth. It teaches us that our true worth is not measured by what we have when life is easy, but by who we become when we have nothing left. The greatest power is not a miracle granted from above. It is the seed of resilience, of understanding, and of love that lies dormant in the soil of every soul. And sometimes life must bring the fire to clear away the gilded canopy above, so we can finally discover the infinite fertility that lies beneath. So the next time life brings you to your knees, the next time you feel you are nothing but ash, ask yourself this: what is the celestial bloom inside of me? And what will I do today to make it grow? If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of finding a garden in the desert of your own life, then consider becoming a part of our community. Hit that subscribe button so we can continue to explore more stories like this together, stories that pull back the curtain on life and reveal the truth of the human heart. Thank you for listening.